Like everybody thinks that everybody who made it is an overnight success. It's just not the case. You fail your way to success. The other challenge is that the people sometimes, not everybody, sometimes when they succeed, they don't want to discuss the failure. Then what happens is that the next generation growing up is thinking, oh shit, so this person went from being a nobody to a somebody, and in between was just like an overnight thing. It's not.
Welcome to the Startup Huddle. I'm your host, Jozef Maruscak, and I'm excited to introduce you to the current and upcoming leaders of the startup tech world. We'll discuss digital products and key takeaways for life and professional growth. So grab a coffee and let's huddle up. Hello, everyone, and welcome again at yet another episode of the Startup Huddle. Today we have here Jaden Sage, a friend of mine, also a founder of and CEO of the foundation, founder and CEO of Global Crypto Council, again, founder Celestial Ventures, a VC fund. Today we want to focus, although we see where the topic and where the discussion goes, but we would like to focus on the AI in the startup space, talk about the risks, talk about the good and bad companies, talk about the companies that can succeed and how to do it. Thanks very much, Jayden, for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Joseph. It's strange that we're always trying to get together in different parts of the world, and this is the only time we'll spend the most amount of time. So this is like crazy. But
Yes.
hey, I guess it's a catch up in itself, right?
Indeed. And I'll be flying to New York soon, so hopefully this time this is going to work out. Cool.
Awesome.
Jayden, just to give the listeners an idea about who you are, can you a little bit more elaborate on where you're coming from and what you do right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So I got into the blockchain space in 2011, and I've been in that space for far longer than I ever thought I would be when I walked into that space. But I'm an angel investor in blockchain. I'm an investor advisor to many operations. I've been advising government agencies forever on crypto. And separately, as another part of my life, I'm in the space industry. I have a fund called Celestial Ventures. We invest in space startups on the pre-seed seed side, mostly focused on non-hardware related endeavors. And our primary focus or our mandate is humanity's settlement of extraterrestrial settlement, so outside of the Earth, whether it's space stations, moon, or Mars. I don't think in our lifetimes we'll go beyond that, but so that's the extent where we'll get. But as you can imagine, that brings into it so many other industries that we will need, right? So it's not just going to be about rocketry; it's going to be about human sustenance in space, and will require efforts from so many different angles: food, shelter, oxygen, so and an economy, because without an economy it's just going to constantly be funded by humans. So within that structure of Celestial, we also invest in AI companies as well as everything else that supports it. So that in itself is what that is. The foundation actually is a think tank that's designed specifically for humanity's interplanetary settlement. So it allows bright minds to come together to be able to think about some of the harder challenges beyond just launch. So that's just taking off now, but it's, believe it or not, it's been around for a while. But it's these things just take time. So in a nutshell, I serve a similar function. I speak around the world in the space industry as well, and I advise startups and government agencies in the same in the same capacity as in the blockchain industry. They are related, actually. If you think about it, they are related because of the fact that we need a new form of mechanisms of exchange and value exchange mechanisms, as well as when we actually get into space, all the other conundrums that we will face. So, as much as they seem that they're separated, from my perspective, they are related. So
Interesting. Maybe we can digress a little bit actually into the space stuff at the beginning. Um, I do not know many founders working in space tech, and I do not know many funds funding space tech. So maybe if you can tell us a little bit more, what is specific about the industry? I guess that it's going to be extremely, resource heavy to even like start building anything there. How is the industry progressing recently? Do we see something similar as we saw with blockchain or AI, or is it still like pretty much a standard sort of standard path of what we see in the companies.
Okay, so I've got my AI hat on for your podcast, but I guess I'm going to put on my space hat for a bit. Uh, so So the space industry is waiting for its eureka moment. What I mean by that is in 1849 San Francisco, when there was a moment where all of a sudden there was money to be made in the space industry. Until that point, it's still a government-led effort. And until it is a government-led effort, the fundings are limited to the common understanding of these nations and the representatives as to how much money and capital allocation they want to do, whether they want to go to the moon or whatnot, and how many space stations they want to afford. You have some billionaires in there in the moment, but what we really need is Amsterdam style operations. So what I mean by that is in the past, you had in Amsterdam, they had these, I forgot the exact term at the moment, but these companies were set up. They're the predecessors to corporations where they would fund voyages into the new world and then they made money off of it. So we need that type of a setup. But in space, we haven't found the gold. We haven't found tobacco. So those are the things we're waiting for. And I'm very confident we're going to get there. We're going to have resources there that we need on Earth. And when that moment occurs, all of a sudden, space is going to go from an industry in the background to an industry in the forefront. So it's waiting for its eureka moment.
And what do you think will be the eureka moment there?
Yeah, primarily it will. I'm not a big proponent of tourism, only because if anybody who goes into space by default, you're a tourist, right? You're going to look out that window and be like, "Oh my God, it's so amazing! Look at that pale blue dot. That's my home." So tourism. I mean, I'm not like, yeah, okay, maybe there's a market, but the real economy will be based on resources that we capture from the moon and from asteroids and whatnot. Moon is the easiest because the reason why we have craters on the moon is primarily because asteroids hit it. So instead of trying to capture a free flow asteroid, as sexy as that may sound, you're better off just plucking the asteroid from the moon, which is so much easier. So it's like there's a little bit of a buffet on the moon of rare earth minerals and elements that we can just take rather than having to do all this adventurisms of trying to capture an asteroid.
Yes, yes. And maybe what about the, so when you say you have a VC there, and with all those limitations of the industry, what are the tickets? Like, what is the typical like seed stage ticket for a space company?
Yeah, I mean it really depends on the company, but I would say 50 to 250 on that end because if there's a few industries in space. Actually, let's just highlight three for your audience without going into any minor into heavy, down the rabbit hole. Um, First and foremost, what everybody sees on the news. You have the heavy lift, the launches, the rocketry. Though the tickets over there is something that can only be written either by billionaires or governments. Then you have the mid-level ones, which are the ones that support satellites. So there's satellite industry. A lot of the stuff a lot of the news we watch and the media we consume comes from satellites. So that's a very robust industry. And then the other industry there is Earth observation, because you have every time you look at a satellite imagery, that's Earth observation. There's observations of mining, what's going on in mining, how we can find new places on Earth to mine. So all of those are very robust cash flowing industries. The heavy lift industry is actually the least cash flowing, obviously, right? So that's why it's supported by government. But the low Earth orbit, what we call LEO industry, is actually quite robust and independent of needs of government support. So that's how far as the industry has gotten low Earth orbit. What we really need is for it to go to MEO and GEO. GEO is geosynchronous Earth orbit, which is where Skylab, not Skylab, Hubble is, and the other one, James Webb is. So that's further out. So we're slowly going beyond Earth's orbit and going further and further out, and the lead is being kept by government. SpaceX is trying to change that. Great for them, but in between is everybody else, and economy and private industries coming on the back end. So there's a lot of, if you think about satellites, there's a lot of software companies that are needed. So software companies are going to be low consumption of resources, financial resources. It's a bunch of guys just trying to find a new system. So that's the type of companies that we would support because we're not in the heavy industry company.
Yes, understood. And how much of, so because you said also that you invest into clearly defined your sort of target investment. You also said that you invest in AI. Now, how does this relate to the space? Are you investing in AI only related to space, or are you generally investing in like AI startups, whatever they do?
That's actually an excellent question. The situation is that investing in AI is like investing in a human, right? Like if you have an employee and you send them for training and you invest in your employee, you don't know what the employee will discover, right? So, or will come up with. So as an example, it was somebody within Google who had Fridays to do whatever they want, and they came up with Google Maps. So the company was investing in that person to do search. Meanwhile, they came up with Google Maps. So the reason why I'm going into that is because within AI is such a denominator industry that while you may be eyeing it for your specific parameters, like for, in my case, for space, supporting AI companies automatically means that it can wind up supporting or making another business model so much better. So the answer is yes, we're looking at it from the lens of space, but we're very, very cognizant of the fact that that could wind up becoming a medical AI operation, because it's easier to derive an economy from it for that company and bringing that product to market, and not waiting for it to be the most awesome communication AI communication company for the moon, so because we're not even on the moon yet, right? So there's the AI just is a company that I don't care. AI is an industry that you come to knowing that it may not end up being for what you thought it would be for.
That makes a ton of sense, and we see that not only with the actual like use cases or the actual products that the companies are building being then used for a different purpose, but also in quite a few AI companies pivoting all the time. I don't actually know, and maybe this is just like my intuition from what I've seen, but I haven't seen an industry that would pivot that much, and especially early stage companies in the space. So tell us a little bit more about, and especially when you talk to so many early stage AI companies, tell us a little bit more about the current situation there. So the AI hype cycle started some time ago, right? Maybe we can talk. What is it? Has it been like 14, 15, 16 months?
Yeah.
Where is it now?
Well, so I think we met during the peak of the AI hype cycle in San Francisco. So yeah, the AI hype cycle is still there, but I think people are sobering out. They're leaving the punch, fruit punch that's been spiked with vodka or something, and are now recognizing that there's a lot of different dynamics at play. You can't just attach AI to your startup and hope that funding will come raining in, although we're still somewhat in the AI hype cycle. If you have a half good product, you'll find money for it, right? But that doesn't mean that you'll survive the long term. People, I like to harp on this from time to time, is that people think that funding automatically means that that's it. You got funded, everything is awesome. That doesn't mean anything, because funding just means that you have some runway. But funding is, they're confusing funding with the exit. Like, okay, we exited, we all made money, and now we're all lying on the beach. That's not what happens. You actually, when you get funded, now you're put to the grinder, and now you got to keep growing the operations. And the bigger your operations, the bigger your headaches. So this is something that's important. Another thing I want to touch upon, which is very important, is being on the receiving end of all these pitches. There's some patterns you detect, right? Like there's some things you detect which the individual people pitching are not capturing, and I'd rather have them have that horizontal perspective. Is that there's way too many dupes, first and foremost. So people will approach you, and you're standing there, and you're trying to keep a very open face and an open mind, and you're like, can I tell this person that this is the 10th time I've heard this same business concept today? So, and they're like, I've been working on this for a year and a half, and you're like, oh, I don't want to break their heart. So you're kind of like, they need to do that a horizontal look here and there to see before you start up with your startup. You need to actually look around to see what the competitor landscape looks like. And it's no, don't stop at YouTube. Don't stop at Google. I like to say this often, that YouTube is like the newspaper, even Google. It's yesterday's news. So the way to find out what's happening in the moment is generally by networking, by meeting people, and that's how you know what's coming, not what has actually happened. So that's the only way a young startup can get out there and be able to say, oh, okay, I see the pulse, I see where I need to tweak. And they skip that because they think like this is it, and possibly psychological, they don't want to know that there's a competitor out there that's got a similar model, because then it bursts their bubble and they're just hoping to destroy all those competitors and go land right at the top. So they don't do that research, and then they wind up in the land of dupes, and then they wonder why they can't get the next level funding, because if somebody who doesn't know that, even as an investor, you can have issues, right? So as an investor, you may also not be aware of the dupe landscape, and then you're like, okay, fine, I'll send you a $250,000 check, whatever the investor is putting in. But now you got the same problem, that when you go to the next investor, maybe that one wasn't as big a fool as the first one you met, and then that guy's like, no, 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 I'm not going to fund you because there's 20 other operations like that. So you caught in the same conundrum, and now you wasted so much of your own time, energy, resources to get to the realization that nobody else is going to fund your operation. So capturing that information in the beginning is very, very important. And that just doesn't apply to AI. It doesn't matter which industry you're in. You better look at the competitor landscape really well.
And that's definitely something that I can see, even though I'm not like all the time just being approached for funding. Just by talking to people, there's so much like similar stuff that is going on, and even when we do for our clients product discovery, and like help them better position the product, help them figure out the target users, and then like build the prototypes, test the prototypes, we many times tend to find competitors, quite a few of them, even though the founder was persuaded there's nothing like that on the market. But like Jayden, but how many are too many competitors if we are talking about it? Because it's such a like a growing space that it might not be possible to start something that somebody else hasn't started yet.
Yeah, that's actually an excellent question, primarily because the answer is not in the quantity, it's in the quality. So let's say you have five competitors, and a guy like me says, if you have no more than 15, you're good. And you look around, a startup looks around and says, oh, great, I'm under. Like, I've only got five competitors. I think I should be good to go. It's not about that. You could have 10,000 competitors, but are you sufficiently differentiated from them and have a competitive advantage over them with your tech or with your concept that would trump you over the hump beyond all 10,000 of them? So that's the biggest thing you got to consider. So if you only have one competitor, just one on the planet, but if they've got those things taken care of, where they have that deep competitive edge over you, go do something else or come up with a different model.
Mm-hmm. What are some other like key mistakes that you see that are happening in the early stage AI startup space? So one we have clearly identified: too many similar companies doing the same thing without the knowledge actually that they're that the market is gonna be quite saturated. What are some other tips and maybe some other things that you've seen?
It goes back to the human tendency, right? So we all have a natural tendency to relax, right? So this goes back to that, and we all have it. So nobody's immune to this, but our desire is to lean back, right? Like to say, I'm going to make this easy for myself. So where am I going with this? Is that you'll notice a lot of people chasing low-lying fruit. And you see that in AI all the time, where the next product that they're like, okay, we'll build this digital AI assistant, right? Or they'll be like, let's take AI to medical, let's take AI to legal, this and that. Fine. But like, look at that industry. while it seems like you're going after low lying fruit, there's a reason why that industry has the challenges it has, and AI will run up, an AI infused startup will run up against those same challenges. Test case, as an example, look at medical, right? So, medical has all these laws and regulations in place to protect privacy and data of the patients. So if you have that, you cannot aggregate that data that AI will use to connect those data points and achieve inference from those data points. So you're going to run into some of those issues. So we lean into these companies and operations that have this low lying fruit. But then those low lying fruits, first of all, again, you're in the land of dupes just because there's so many people chasing low lying fruit. But at the same time, that's not an operation that's going to be able to deliver something in the long run, because in the short term you may have some sort of an operation, but until all the dynamics of that operation change out, it's going to be an uphill battle. So you want to watch out not to chase so many of the low lying fruits that people have been. I think it's coming down now because I think we probably have about 100,000 medical AI startups already. Like we've hit those high numbers of legal AI, medical AI. So I think now nobody's like going into there because of the oversaturation. But in any industry, you'll first have that happen where people will just run in because they think they can hit that low lying fruit.
Yeah, I completely agree with that, and also with the anecdote with legal. So before Labs, I was actually doing a legal tech startup that we wanted to predict legal case outcomes, so like case outcome predictions in Britain. And again, like there was so much hype about this because we were one of the few on the market, and at the same time, quite a lot of interest from the law firms. But actually, at some point, we have realized that it's just like it's interesting, that's why people are interested, but then it's very extremely hard to sell in that industry. Like selling to law firms, tech stuff, selling to law firms, from all my experiences, it's a really an uphill battle that takes a long time, and that's actually the reason why nobody else was doing what we were doing. Also, at the same time, we then at some point realized that with that, it was 7 years ago, so with that level of AI and what was available on the market, it was impossible to solve the problem to the extent where client would pay a lot of money for the solution. Another reason why companies weren't there, and I think that this is exactly what you're saying. There are certain markets, certain opportunities that look very very good, but then actually when when you do a proper, if you did a proper job of what we call again product discovery, you will realize that it's not the right opportunity.
I do want to give the your audience something positive there, right? So we just told them what not to do, what not, like don't do this, don't do that. Let's give an example of what to do or what to look for or what to devise, right? Like, so, okay, you told me what not to do. Now what the hell do I do? Right? Like, so we need to kind of give them that. So I want to give an example of a company. And that was the first company that I saw that in that big hype cycle 12, 14 months ago when we were all pounding the pavement in San Francisco, right? Um, it was a company that was using uh, AI to detect patterns that cannot be detected from our mind, from the human mindset, for trades, for financial trades. So there are patterns that are beyond our capacity to absorb and act upon. So this company was taking those patterns on those large data sets and deriving patterns that then can be consumed by the humans to be able to say, okay, I never even noticed that pattern, but the AI detected it and I can use it to make better trades. So that is a project that would have long-term durability, would actually have the revenue and the cash flows to sustain, because you're just going to charge an incremental amount to all the people who use this service. So that's something that can have that long term um, positive effect, and at the same time provide a longevity to the startup. So there are business models and that's exclusively an AI thing, right? So you cannot say, well, if humans can't detect this, we'll put 10,000 humans to the task. It still won't be possible. So AI intrinsically is providing a service here that humans can't do. So then it serves the humans, right? So that is where they need to focus on. How can we use AI not in the low lying fruit area, not in the 700,000 dupes, but in delivering what only AI exclusively can bring to the table?
Makes sense. Makes sense. So the advice is to, yeah, yeah, all good. Now, um, anything else that comes to your mind? Like, of course, figuring out the special added value of AI and the cash flow and the market, all that kind of stuff. Anything else that comes to your mind that really differentiates the good AI companies from the bad ones at the early
It's
stage?
probably not an answer you want to hear, Joseph, but I'm gonna say it anyway. Don't be a dweeb. Don't just because you're passionate about AI or whatever tech you're passionate about and go run and work for a giant corporation. Because if you
Mm-hmm.
made it this far and then you are at a point where you have the network or you're in a circle where people, like-minded, bright people, are working on some of these bigger challenges using the best and the latest technologies such as AI, go build something. Give yourself that opportunity to try something before you run into a quote unquote plantation.
Mm-hmm.
Like don't go work for a plantation. Go and make something happen. Break the walls, change things out, try it. Because here's the most important point in everything I just said: is when you fail, you still succeed. So, how do you succeed if you fail? Because you solved so many challenges before you hit failure. So, that one or two things that failed you, you will figure out the next time around, but you solved all those other challenges. Just a quick summary of that. Like, okay, you have a couple of young coders and they're trying to figure out what to do. And they're like, okay, we got to set up a corporation, right? Like, where do I set it up? Is it Delaware? Is it this? Is it there? Should it be private? Should it be in the US? Should it be outside? Wherever. That's something you solved. That's not going to change. Once you solve it, you've solved it. Then it's like how do I hire people? How do we raise? What's a pitch deck? How do I put a pitch deck together? Who do I put it in front of? How do I get the funding? How do I sign the documents? Where's the lawyer? All of those things are now solved. You're not going to auto become dumb and go back to zero. So you solved all those problems and then you hit an insurmountable blockage and then your company failed. But you solved all those. So the next time you start, you don't start here. You start right here. And hopefully, in conceptualizing your next startup, you've already broken through. So if you've already broken through, you're just going to solve the next ones. So it automatically means you're going higher and higher up the mountain every time you start, which means if somebody looks at it from a distant vantage point, they'll say, "Oh, this person isn't starting at the bottom of the mountain. Now they're here. Then a year later they're here. Then they're here." So you're always winning and succeeding when you're failing, because failing just means that one component didn't work, and you just got to solve that one component. Think of it like a combination lock. A combination lock from your gym lockers from high school, it wouldn't open unless you had the last number. Until that time, it won't open. You got the first three numbers, you don't have the fourth one. That sucker ain't opening. So knowing that you have three numbers is a much better place than the guy who's still fumbling on remembering that first number, right? So the lock will not open until you have the fourth number. So just getting discouraged that, oh, I can't do this. Well, you solve three of the numbers. You just need to solve the fourth. So that's how it works. It's always trial and error.
Yes, and that's why that's I think exactly the reason why serial founders, even though they fail, it's not necessarily a red flag for the investors. The other way around, if you have a good story and you can understand, you can explain very well what's the experience before, it dramatically increases your chances. It's a very specific industry, entrepreneurship in the startup world, where the chances are extremely low of you succeeding. Is kind of a getting through enough failures until you make it, or you might not make it, but still, I mean, you've become a very good operator, right? Or become a very good at so many things on your journey.
There's terrible narratives outside where it's an overnight success. Like everybody thinks that everybody who made it is an overnight success. It's just not the case. You know, you fail your way to success. And but the other challenge is that the people sometimes, not everybody, sometimes when they succeed, they don't want to discuss the failures, right? So then what happens is that the next generation growing up is thinking, oh shit, so this person went from being a nobody to a somebody, and in between was just like an overnight thing. It's not, this is what gets mentally conditioned in our head. And then what happens? We start questioning ourselves, like, oh, so and so succeeded, so and so is a billionaire, so and so is this, and meanwhile I suck. I'm on my third startup and I keep failing. Well, the only difference between you and that person is they're not discussing their three failures in between.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
indeed.
it's important to keep that all those factors in mind as you go through this journey of pain, which is what startup land is.
Yes, but also I think, yeah, so you shouldn't be discouraged by the fact that you failed one, two, three times. Uh, but I think the important learning there is you should really look at least from my end, you should really look at whether it's you're enjoying the job, you're enjoying solving those problems. What do you get from the whole experience, right? Not necessarily at the current results. So I've seen also quite a few people that simply you know are entrepreneurs because it's valued in society, in certain societies, yet it seems like they are burned out and they don't like their job at all. Then it's not probably not the best path. So you need to know your reasons why you do what you do.
100%. So there's this old joke that a surgeon, his basement was flooded one day, so he had to take the day off, call his secretary, and say, "Look, no patients today. Put off all my surgeries. I've got a flood in the basement. I got to call the plumber." He calls the plumber. The plumber goes downstairs. He says, "Look, I got a big problem. I've got Noah's flood downstairs, and you got to help me." He goes, "Calm down, calm down. Let me go down." He goes down and he says, "I'll be right back." He goes down, and within like 30 seconds, the plumber comes back up and he says, "I've solved the problem for you." He goes, "Your water's going down." He looked, he's like, "Wow, that's amazing. How much you want for it?" He goes, $1,000. He goes, $1,000 for 30 seconds of work? That's crazy. I'm a surgeon. I don't make that kind of money. You make that kind of money? He goes, "Yeah, I had the same problem when I was a surgeon too."
Nice. Cool,
so
cool.
the reason why I'm bringing that up is that, are you only doing this for money?
Yeah.
Is a surgeon only doing this for money, or does he go home knowing that, hey, I made a difference? I saved somebody's life, somebody's father, mother, sister, brother. I make a difference in this world. So that's another reason why a surgeon does what he does. Otherwise, successful surgeons could retire. You have surgeons worth $10 million. Why don't they just say, you know what, that's enough money, I'm out? No, they work till they're really, really old. So they're really not doing it for money. They're doing it because they're saving lives. And even the plumber, I mean, the plumber went out and saved this guy's life so he can go and do the surgeries. So even the plumber is passionate about what he does. So if you don't have that passion, then and if you're only looking at it from the lens of financial gains, then you're missing the point. So, and that'll drive you. So your failures are still going to drive you to get better and better, because I'm sure the plumber and the surgeon also had failures.
Yeah.
And within those failures, they learned because they cared about what they do.
Yeah. Yeah. Indeed. Indeed. Great. So I think now we have flagged the do's and don'ts on in the for the early stage AI startups. We also talk a little bit about the mindset and why you should be a founder or shouldn't be a founder. Uh, Maybe the last topic here on the AI note. Uh, Last time we spoke, we talked about the chances of AI actually threatening humanity. um, Also, as we discussed now, Mark Zuckerberg with Llama talking about open source and about all those huge corporates keeping the models for themselves as black boxes. What do you think about that? Will AI is AI a threat, and if yes, why, and if not, why?
Yeah, I feel that we're not mentally catching up to the reality that that question has already been answered. to ask the question whether AI will be a competitor, if not a threat, but at least a competitor to the intellectual prowess of humanity, has already been answered. The answer is yes. And how we wrestle with it and how we deal with it is the bigger dialogue and narrative that we need to be having, because it's already there. And if you don't believe it, just go to ChatGPT and type in that, write me a poem about whatever, pick the most stupidest topic, like, okay, let's say like a marker, write me about a marker, and it'll give you this amazing poem. And what I find most hilarious is the speed it'll give you that poem. So our greatest creatives were taking, there's so much time to write, Frost wrote amazing poems, and Edgar Allan Poe wrote these amazing poems. He took his time. It wasn't done in seconds. So that should give us an idea that, these things are changing and becoming so robust. These large language models are becoming so robust. What is a large language? What is language? Language is noise that specifically can be decoded by another human to facilitate communication. So it's a language, unlike just noise. So a dog barks, it's just noise. Possibly he's communicating, get away from me, I'll bite you. But the more complex language is a human creation designed to serve a function. So when you have a large language model, it is taking a human creation, communication medium, language, and taking it to the next level. So if it can capture language and it can now capture poems, art, it is slow. The water is rising. The water is rising higher and higher, and eventually we're going to be looking at the water above our head. So the only thing we could do is learn how to float in this new flood of AI induced technological um, growth. And the thing we face is obsolescence, technological obsolescence for us and for AI, a whole new world. So we need to come to terms with that, and we need to figure out how we are going to sustain further up. Right now, AI is our tool, and it's being marketed as such. So it's our tool. It's there to serve us, and it's our servant, and we're the master. But we will soon discover that the servant may become the master. Um, and we need to be ready for that. And we need to build in mitigations that are not regulatory, to be honest with you. It's how we're going to live in a world where we have sentience, who can access all of human knowledge in a millisecond. And we can't do that. None of us, our brightest minds, cannot access that level of knowledge at that speed. So for us to say, pull the plug, not possible for a variety of reasons. Um, can we actually compete with it? Not possible. So what do? We need to carve out a place for ourselves in this equation. And it would be really good if we got out of the denial mode and went into the mode of, okay, how do we sustain as humans?
That was a quite a scary answer, I would say. But so
Okay,
one
so
part of that answer, yeah.
we'll digress from the truth.
Yes.
I'll put on my Hollywood cap and give you the happy ever. No, the Disney hat, the happy ever ending.
Yes. Yeah, yeah. That would be great. No, these are not easy times. So, yeah, so you essentially said, or you think that, of course, like there are not many things human can do, if any things human can do that AI will not be able to do better, right? Therefore, like so many of human skills and the will become obsolete essentially in this world, because anyone else would be able to do that with a new tool driven by AI better than any other human. Now, uh, when does the point? The main question is, why would the point happen where the AI could get out of control? I mean, what we can get out, what can get out of control is the speed by which we are automating human labor, right? And because of that, there are problems in the economy. But when would it get out of the control in the way where we wouldn't be able to pull the plug, or simply, still decide what to do with the economy, with the political system, democracy, whatever. When would it become that, let's say, dangerous?
Yeah, I also want to touch upon that very sad narrative that I just gave. So I want to change that up a little bit, because there is a positive side to this. And it's not a positive side as a full counter. It is a way forward, which is what I want to just touch upon for a second. I like to say often that the future lies hidden in the past. And we need to understand that deeply in order for us to figure out how we traverse the future. So let's go back in time and think of when humans were. There was a dude somewhere. He was making flint hand axes, right? So he just came up with something, and he was like, okay, I've got this flint hand axe, and it's the greatest invention. Nobody thought of it. And now I'm making them, and everybody and their mother wants one. All the tribes are coming to me. All the people are coming out of their caves. They want to come to me, and they want to buy my flint hand axe. I set up an entire factory. I have all of these grunts sitting there just chiseling away, making flint hand axe. And it's the greatest invention since sliced bread. Well, sliced bread wasn't invented back then, so it is the sliced bread. So you have this flint hand axe company, and then some dude somewhere says, I can't compete with this guy. They got all the resources. They got everything under control. And here I am eating dirt and eating twigs. And then he's looking at the twigs, and all of a sudden he sees a straight twig, right? He's like, wow, this one is quite straight. I wonder if I take this flint hand axe and attach it to the front and turn this into a projectile. So instead of the fools over there taking the flint hand axe and running it up to the mastodon and trying to stab it, if I put a long enough piece of wood to it and make it a projectile, I can be safe and hit that mastodon from a distance. Now, all of a sudden, the first guy is sitting there going like, oh my God, like there goes my business model. I'm screwed. I got all these other cavemen to support and their families. And here comes the guy with the projectiles, and like, we're out of business. So what do we do? What do we do? So the lesson here is that humans, the greatest thing going for humans is that we have our creativity and our desire to find sustenance for ourselves, to survive, and then find ways to thrive, not just survive. So we have always come up with ways to do that. So the narrative is like saying, you have a factory and then it's filled with robots, so everybody else is going to go and commit suicide because they don't have jobs. Yes, if you're looking at it in the short term, and the next day they don't have jobs. But the greatest thing humans have going for them is that they have ingenuity. And ingenuity will make you have new ways. Up till now, we never had another sentient. The chimpanzees didn't one day have an evolutionary acceleration because a meteor hit or something, and they just got smarter than us. It would be the same thing. If all of a sudden the chimpanzees became smarter than us because they're only 2% differentiated from us in DNA, if they got smarter than us, then we would be in the same boat. Like, what do we do? What do we do? So would we all just say, well, we're all dead. We got to roll over and die because the chimpanzees are now smarter than us? Obviously, we'd find new ways to continue our survival and find ways to thrive. So we are caught in that because we've been used to this system where it's dominated by us as the only sentient or the dominant sentiency. Now we have a competitor. So the monopoly is over, and now you have a competitor, and you need to learn and adjust to that. It's going to suck. It's not going to be pretty. It's going to be lots of disruptions, but we're here and we can't turn back. So like, either we figure out ways forward or we keep complaining and find ways to regulate the crap out of it. It's those are all exercises in futility where our energy should be focused on our ingenuity and finding ways to move forward.
And I think we can leave it on that half positive note, but with a clear plan of what we should do. And thanks very much, Jayden. Thanks very much for coming. That was we touched quite a few topics. I'm sure the listeners will profit from it, and I hope we'll see each other soon in person in New York.
Absolutely. It was a good time. Take care.
And that's it for today's episode of the Startup Huddle. Thank you very much for listening, and make sure to catch all episodes on the startuphuddle.com and follow me on LinkedIn and Twitter for more insights and updates on the world of startups. Thanks again for tuning in.